Hi, Bill. Welcome to the Mighty Merp podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Melissa, and thank you for having me.
I am really excited to be talking to Bill Scull, who is my investigator. I like to claim him as my own.
And you do.
Um, Although you are my investigator, you're not really, I have to share you, unfortunately.
You do. You do, unless you want to pay me a whole lot so I don't have to share.
I don't think I can afford you. You're worth every penny of it. Every penny you're worth. So, uh, Bill, you are a private investigator, and obviously, you do a lot of work for me in my office. And I, always rave about how amazing you are for my clients. But before we sort of talk about what you do on the private investigating side, could you share with all of my listeners sort of what your background was before you went into becoming a private investigator?
I certainly can, yes. I was a member of the New Jersey State Police for a little over 27 years. I began my tour of duty, I guess we'll say it, on the road. I was on road patrol for about 10 years. And in the New Jersey State Police, unlike some people think that's highway patrol, it's really not where we were. I was in southern New Jersey, so I was in Port North Station, Woodbine, Absecon, Bass River. So we were a general policing stations. We were the police in many, many areas. So I did that for 10 years. And that's where that's where any police officer gains a lot of their skills, because you're talking to so many people, responding to jobs, stopping cars, making arrests, doing different things like that. So 10 years of very, very valuable experience. After that, for about a year or two, I was a station detective in Woodbine, and we handled all the detective work that came in that the road patrol didn't handle. Um, After that, I was fortunate enough to get selected to go to New Jersey State Police Major Crime. Major crime is actually, they call it homicide now. We would handle kidnapping, homicides, equivocal deaths, suspicious deaths, different things like that, shootings, very important, big, complex, high profile things. So I was there for around 7 years. Then I went kicking and screaming from there to internal affairs. And I went kicking and screaming. There was a pilot project. They were trying to get diversity in there, just different people from different skill sets. And I ended up making a home there for the rest of my career. I was in charge of all internal investigations. That's administrative and criminal investigations against members of the state police, and there's like 2,500 of them statewide. And we were very busy, very challenging assignment, and it was good, I think, for the state police to have someone with my investigative background in there. And we ran all the investigations and consulted with the attorney general every day and all those things. And it was a lot of experience. Yes.
And so 27 years. So you started at like 16, right? Maybe 15. And
No, 25. I started at 25. I came from a blue collar family, and my father was a pipe fitter, and his father and different relatives were, and that's the direction they were kind of leading me.
Mhm.
But I worked in the construction industry, I guess, for about 8 years. And then when I was 25, I went in the State Police Academy and began that journey. It was a very good journey.
And you are now a private investigator. You have a private business with a partner, correct?
I do. We have Olbrich Skull Investigations, though I get called Bill Olbrich all the time. My partner is Carl Olbrich, and I'm Bill Scull, so it's Olbrich Skull Investigations.
And Carl's also a former state trooper.
Yes, Carl has our careers paralleled each other to a certain point, and they deviated at the end. Carl was on the road. Carl was a station detective, and from that's the point in time I started working together with him and I together. We both went into major crime together, so he did all the things that I did there as well. And then ultimately, he left the major crime a little bit before I did, and he went back to be a station detective, and then he went and he was in official corruption. So while I was doing internal affairs, he was doing official corruption, politicians and different things like that. South, he was did the southern part of New Jersey, dealing with all the official corruption.
And how long has Olbrich Skull Investigations been in business?
2016, I think we were licensed in February 2nd of 2016. I retired January 1st, 2016. Carl retired 4 years prior to me, and he started his own Olbrich Associates investigative agency. And we had always had the plan that we were going to join together because we worked so well together. And we had the plan to do it. I retired. We started USI, as we'll call it now, and we've been going since 2016. So we're in our eighth.
So today is your anniversary. Happy
year.
8-year anniversary,
Yes,
February
it is.
2nd.
Yes,
That's
it is.
awesome. So you said that you were licensed as a private investigator. Tell me, because I don't know if people realize that, you can't just say, I'm a private investigator. There's sort of a requirements in order to be a private investigator in New Jersey, correct?
Yes, there is. We're licensed through the state, and the state police has a private detective unit. They actually handle all the licensing, and they check your background. You have to have a certain investigative background to go in. It doesn't have to be police work, but most of the time it is. But some people work as investigators for other agencies. They work in different companies as investigators. So you have to have an investigative background. You have to be squeaky clean in terms of criminal matters, credibility matters, no issues of credibility or anything like that. And then ultimately, once you go through an in-depth background process, you get licensed, and then you get relicensed every 2 years. They take your fingerprints, do your background, check up on things, checking your credit and all that, making sure that you're doing the right stuff, and that's so all investigators in New Jersey have to be licensed.
So, what do you think people think you do? And then what is it that you really do? And we can get into some cases, get into some interesting details and cases of how you can really assist lawyers in their case.
Well, I think generally the public believes it's like Magnum PI and like cheaters. I think a lot of people think it's more like the cheaters, like my wife's friends, and she has book group, and they'll talk, and they think that's what I do. We're climbing around in the bushes with binoculars, watching people kiss. They shouldn't be kissing, and yeah, that's what they think. That's what they think, but. We do some, cohabitation and child custody matters, which involve things like that, aspects like that. But our company is primarily involved in criminal defense support and consultation. That's primarily what we do because of our background of investigating things at a high level, complex things for so long. That's just where it felt like we should go, and we saw a hole there too because there's not a lot of people who want to do that. We don't know of many PI firms that provide that service that have the experience to legitimately provide that service at a high level. So there weren't many, especially
Right.
down in the area. So
And what's unique, and you said it, but I'm gonna like just highlight it. Like you said, consultation and investigation. And so there really are two components. And so um, people only think really about the investigation. And I think the consultation part is so much more helpful in some ways to the lawyers that are handling cases because I always look at the case as a lawyer and sort of what's going to happen in court. And I know when I talk to you about my cases, when we're talking about consultation, you always bring it from a different perspective as well. And you always ask questions about the case that I would say is a very, we're consulting. It is an investigation point of view. It's sometimes sort of picking apart the case, picking apart the case from the state's perspective, but also as picking apart the case from the defense perspective. So if you could talk about the consultation and what sort of you add, and maybe give an example of a case or two of how you utilize the consultation component.
Yes, Carl and I believe our consultation part of our business is it's underutilized because we believe a lot of uh, lawyers, law firms don't really know how to use us for that. They maybe they don't trust us. They don't know of our experience. But the relationships we have with firms like yours and some other firms that are so um, um, valuable, or we do primarily, we'll do case reviews, and you'll give us a case and we review all the discovery. We ask for things that you don't have, a lot of times aren't provided, and we assess that information. We make links between what the videos show, what the witness statements show. We find whether there's deficiencies in the investigative process, there's things that were left out, things that need to be done. We, find out about evidence. How was evidence collected that should have been or not? Was evidence handled properly? The chain of custody of evidence, things like that. Assessments of scenes. Credibility of witnesses is probably one of the biggest things. Credibility of witnesses and victims and people involved. You listen to what they say. You listen to their interviews, and you really sometimes things don't make sense. We pick those out. We point them out to you. A lot of times we do full case reviews for you and others. We come up ultimately with a product after we review the case with, an outline of the case, a timeline of the case, the strength of the state's case, the weaknesses in the state's case, discovery that's missing, and investigative support that we believe that we can provide. And that's generally our case review process. And then once that is done for law firms like you who use us for that, and then we discuss it with you, whatever the budget is, whatever you want us to do, we work for you and we provide the support that you request.
Right. And the case review is so important because, the idea of, I know for you, if I don't do this anymore, I might have used to been like, can you just call and talk to this person? And you're like, I can't do that. I need to know, enough about the case so I can ask intelligent questions on the phone. And you're also very magical about getting people to tell you things.
Yeah, Carl says I have a black belt in cooperation. So, I look at it, and this is the way it was in the state police when we're trying to get suspects to talk and all that. You can't. People would watch TV and they watch NYPD Blue and all those things, and the police officers are in the room and they're yelling at people. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. You can't really try to convince someone that they need to tell you. You have to convince them it's in their best interest to talk to you and tell you. They're not going to talk to you unless they believe it's in their best interest, or if they're an innocent, like a witness, that it's all for the greater good and things like that, which it is. Because Carl and I, what our business is number one, we're rooted in integrity. Everything we do, we are honest, we are open. We always tell people, where we're coming from, who we're working for. We're not here to twist people's minds around and to make people change their story. We're seeking facts. Law firms like yours and the firms we work for, they need information. And Carl always says, we want to gather the information and provide it to you so you can make good decisions. Because you're the lawyer, we're not. So that's what we're doing. We seek cooperation. I try to get people emotionally vested in it. I tell them what I think they need to know, enough to make them decide, I want to help him. I want to talk to him. Or witnesses, letting them know, maybe they're against the defense, or maybe they're for the defense. Who knows? But telling them there's just some things we need to clarify. And that's normally the case. Almost every case we get, the questioning is not usually complete. We find Carl and I have always been very skilled in interviewing. And the biggest part of interviewing is listening to the answers. You may have, 30 questions that you want to go down, but if you listen to the question number two, that answer may guide you to go somewhere else, and you have to vet that. That's where we see a little bit, though, for the most part, police officers are doing a great job. They're a lot of times understaffed, overworked. They're caused to be many things more than police officers. But just interviewing skills is so important. And we don't know. We hope that the training support is there to teach these younger detectives about listening. It's not about a list of questions, asking those questions, and then closing out. You have to listen.
Yeah, I think that I've seen a lot in my own cases where um, that's probably the biggest problem with the statements taken is that either they're already coming from a narrative that they just want to build on the narrative, which is not always an accurate narrative. So that's the problem if you're not listening because you're not getting the details. Um, and and so the other is that the questions are just there. So I know an officer's not listening or a detective's not listening when they're interviewing my client and they're interrupting my client mid-statement.
Yes, we see that a lot. You and I talk about this all the time. That I, from my view, I see what I believe is happens. The prosecution relies very heavily upon that police report. And again, I'm not bashing police, so let's get that clear. At my heart, I'm 27 years. I did it, and I know it's a difficult job, and it's 10 times harder now than it was. But not all the time, and we see this, and we talk about this honestly. That police report doesn't always. It can't reflect everything. First of all, there are things done in the interview, things at the scene that are not
Mm-hmm.
included in there, and you can't put everything in there, but sometimes, and to my dismay, I see it's not always fully contextually accurate. It's like I think it was a movie, My Cousin Vinny, and someone could say, "I robbed the bank" or "I robbed the bank." On paper, it says "I robbed the bank." It looks like they admitted that they robbed the bank. Now that's just funny, and it's a funny way to talk about it, but context is important, and asking all the questions is important. I also see many times now, many interviews, because we get to watch all the interviews, everything's recorded, whether it's body cam or in the station house, that sometimes the police officers, I think they're maybe in a hurry and they're actually providing the answer in the question, and that's very critical when you're dealing a lot of times with sex assaults and violent crime, and like they may know something and they provide it in the answer, and then the person may just go along with that instead of expanding upon what they saw, what they believe, what they heard. So those are the things we do in our case reviews. We look for all those things. We look at the interviews. We piece everything together. We find the holes. Every case has a hole. When I was a trooper, um, and doing my major crime reports, one thing that Carl and I both did, we almost did it from a risk management perspective, that type of a concept in a civil combined with a criminal, where we would look for, what's the defense attorney, Melissa Rosenblum, going to pick on? What is she going to, when the defense gets this, we charge this person with this, we believe they did it, these are the proofs we have, where are the holes? And then we would be known for going and addressing those holes. Because when you got my report from the police side, you would know that I thought about that hole and I filled it. You're going to know in the report what my answer is going to be, or what the proofs are going to show to that. And I think that stopped a lot of times our cases from going to trial, because the defense attorneys would see our stuff and the holes would be closed.
Right.
Now, from the defense side, we look for those holes. A lot of times they exist, and we find out the information. We fill those holes, and if it's to the support of the defense, we provide you with that. If it's against the defense, we'll come to you, as you know, and say, Melissa, the police did a great job. The proofs are there. Your client appears to us to be guilty. Maybe we can do this, or maybe we can do that, but we really don't know where else we can go with this. It's a tight case, and we'll be honest with you. We won't
Right.
lie.
Right. And one of the things that you do really well is the reports that you write are so clear, they're concise, they're well written. Um, and they're so detailed about what you've done, so that I know for me, on the cases where we have found true problems, and we've had a number of cases, and we can talk about either cases that we've handled together or cases that you've handled where the information that you found really showed that the individual was not guilty of the offense. There was exculpatory evidence, or maybe the interviews weren't as thorough, and or there was a misunderstanding. We had a case where I had a client charged with a very serious domestic violence case for against her husband, who really just had dementia type issues and was ill, and it took a lot of work for us to get all those charges dismissed, and but it based on all the work that we did together. But the reports that you provide are so detailed, that there are times that I've been able to just send it to the prosecutor with my own letter saying, please rely on USI's investigation report to show that, client is, not guilty, or there's exculpatory evidence, or the matter should be dismissed. And that's really unusual as well, Bill, to be able to, like, me not have to rewrite what you did. It is so succinct, and it saves me a lot of time. But, you know, I would say I wish I could hire you on almost all of my cases, because um as you said, like, when I look at a case, I look at it from where the holes are all the time, and what the state really can prove or can't prove. I also, this is that I do think what's in the reports is not always what's in the videos. So watching the videos and going through every single body cam, every single interview is so time consuming and essential. I'm going to candidly tell you, I don't know how people, single attorney offices or offices without a lot of staff, how they can do it. I mean, I have two full-time college graduate assistants and an attorney, and it takes us hours upon hours to get through the video. But the video and the reports aren't always the same. And then that's part of finding the holes. And sometimes it's helpful to us, and sometimes it's not. But you know,
That's our job. When you come to us and you hire USI for that and a case review, that's what we do. And again, you can have other people look at it, but I think Carl and I, with our extensive investigative experience, we may pick out things that may be missed by someone else in a busy law office, and looking at it, we will find different nuances and different things that need to be followed up on, that may point toward another direction that wasn't explored. When Carl and I came to um, form USI, one of our first meetings, we sat and we talked, and we've been friends and workmates for a long time. And Carl said, and I fully agreed. He said, what our goal is: number one, integrity, honesty, professionalism, all those things. And I think we're there. We're there. We've always been there because that's who we are. But he said he wanted our report to mean something to everyone. And like the prosecution, I'm sure all day long they're getting reports from legal investigators and different things like that. We wanted our report, when it came in, they knew that it meant something. They knew that we're not BSing them. We're not twisting things around. We're not providing half of an account. It's done so professional, like their own investigators would do, and sometimes maybe even better, but that it meant something. And I believe clearly that we are there. I believe our reports do mean something. I believe the results that we get uh, through consult or through working with attorneys like you and other law offices, so many dismissals, so many cases where the prosecution has had pause and said, oh, okay, well, let's look at this. Many cases, indictments dismissed, things dismissed. Now, looking at that, I just wanted to say this too: a career police officer, 27 years. I never thought from that perspective that there would be people charged, things go through, people being prosecuted where clearly there is a question about their guilt. I did not see that. Um, our organization was very structured, very formal, very very well trained. But there are still things that slip up in every police force. But I didn't know that there's more than I thought. And I want to say that there's more times that we're looking at cases that we get from law firms and you and all the others, and we're like, they, there's not really probable cause in our mind to charge him. They didn't look this way. The evidence doesn't support that. But the police report may reflect that it does. But
Right.
when you look at all the context, all the stuff, it doesn't. So that's our job to point that out, give it to you in a compelling way that you can use that.
Right. I mean, so I always think that sometimes it's that they're overcharged. That's possibly, there's an attempt to charge 1 degree higher than what the client did, or that um, there's like a buy-in to a false narrative. Do you think it's different now? Like when you're saying you didn't see that as an officer, but you're seeing it now. Um, do you so I mean, there's a part of me, I've been doing this 27 years. So there's a part of me, and I was in Philadelphia. I would say there's always cases that I've experienced where I thought the client shouldn't have been charged. And listen, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I joke that all my clients are not guilty. All
Oh,
my
absolutely.
clients are, all my clients are innocent, right?
All of
But
them.
all of them. Um, that sometimes, I'm still fighting for clients that, it might be a little bit harder to, stand by that statement. Um, but I always knew that it was there, shockingly. I'm still shocked by some of the things that I see on videos that are occurring. So I guess, my question, it might be a hard question for you to answer, is do you think it's different, or do you think now that you're seeing all police work versus what was in your unit or what you were doing? But I
Yeah.
know you, and I know you said, like, we always try to fill the holes to make sure that.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand your question, and I have to say, I believe it's that I wasn't exposed to any more than the stuff that was going, whether it was through me, through my unit, or through those that was under my command. So I didn't have the full picture. Now we had the luxury of, again, state police, and we have, we're not inner city police officers who are running from job to job, and they have that massive crime, and they're running from one murder to the next, or one
Mhm.
violent crime to the next, and I feel for them and I understand it. So when I was in my job, I didn't see that. I mean, I knew other police officers had harder jobs documenting. They didn't have time. And now to move forward about today. Today, I think is especially tough because I think people are requesting so much of the police officers to be the social workers to just do so much more,
Mhm.
in data for police accountability. I understand all that. I was in internal affairs. I do understand that, but I just think being a police officer is such a difficult job. So I don't know that it's more now because I don't know what it was then. I was in my cubby hole of
Yeah.
professionalism. I do know this too. With the advent of, defund the police and people being upset with police, a lot of skilled police officers, good supervisors left.
Mhm.
And people still, do all the departments have the people who really care and are good and experienced, training people under them, reviewing their product? I mean, there were times, and Carl and I were talking about this recently. Just there was a case with a murder in one of our stations, and I was working there as a supervisor in major crime, and younger detectives interviewed somebody, and it was somebody with a very low IQ, very emotionally challenged, if you will, and got him to admit to something that I knew when I heard what was happening, and I reviewed what was happening. It he wasn't admitting to anything.
Mhm.
People think you can't have a false confession. It's rare, but you can, and he did. And so what I'm saying is I was a supervisor there. I cared, I was experienced, and so I said, no, that's not right. That's not right. And eventually it was undone. He was re-interviewed with other questions, and all he wanted to do was please his interviewer and go home because of his, emotional state and his challenges that he had. And that
Mhm.
does happen. But do all the police departments have those experienced people to help guide the younger, up and coming detectives and to train them? I don't know. I don't know. A lot of experience left, so I don't.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to some cases that either you've handled for other attorneys or you've handled for me. Some of the amazing work that you've done that kind of I always say that when it happens, it like I'm still shocked. I love the fact that 27 years, I'm still like amazed. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Cases. So I don't want to say crazy cases, but sort of the work you've done to have a defendant or client um, charges dismissed or exonerated. I always like when we find evidence that completely exculpates all my clients innocent.
Yes, and we have. And again, from the police officer's perspective, some would possibly listen to me and say, "That's bull crap. That doesn't happen," but it does, and we've seen it. Tons of cases. And I had a list. I put down a list of ones that we've had dismissals, or a lot of them outright dismissals, dismissals of indictments, dismissals of charges, and not because of some twisted technicality, because that's what the facts support.
Because they were
Carl,
not guilty. Because they were
Carl, yes,
not guilty.
Carl and I find facts. We are, it's our consult. That a lot of law firms don't use us for that. They may say, we just want you to go, do this interview, and we'll try to say, hey, do you want us to review it? And sometimes they don't. I think they would be very pleased if they did, but they don't always do that. But you do. We have a great relationship. You understand what we provide. So a couple cases, just thinking of a few. One with you, and we're not bringing up names, obviously, but there was a case where a juvenile, I believe it was an African American male, charged with a sex assault against a Caucasian female, and we reviewed the case, and the statements didn't really make sense, and I conveyed all this to you, and different things were left out, and different information was provided. Long story short, I suggested and you supported, we need to see the phone. We need to see the phone dump, right? We have to see that, and we tried to get it, and there were some roadblocks in the way. And no, you don't need it. There's nothing here. Don't look over
Yeah, the
there.
state was
Nothing,
telling us the whole time, but
nothing
I'm
there.
just going to add some facts. The client was only 14 and was a freshman in high school, black male, who uh, the allegation was he had forceful sex with a 16-year-old young lady, and our client said it was consensual. Uh, and there was a video where the young lady was being interviewed with the phone,
Yeah.
and you could tell that she was not being forthright. And that's you were able to look at that and
It's not right. Yeah, they were talking about her Snapchat, and she was looking at it, and they asked her, what does it say? And she wouldn't read it. And then the police officers doing the interview looked at it, but they didn't enunciate what they were reading. So we knew that there's a problem there, and they totally didn't concern themselves. And
well,
in
they
the
did
end,
look at each other like,
yeah, yeah. It didn't look right. It didn't look right. And her story didn't make sense. And in the end, she had another guy that she liked. He found out about the encounter. And then all of a sudden, we sometimes would call it, maybe callously, like buyer's remorse kind of a thing. People have sex, and then later on, they change it to something else because they shouldn't have had it. Somebody finds out they shouldn't have had it. But we demanded, and through you, did a great job not taking no for an answer. A lot of lawyers may have taken that no, and you battled it. I believe the court was involved, and the prosecutor said, there's nothing here. We don't want to give them the phone. Then they gave us, if you remember, a partial dump. It wasn't even the full dump. The minute I got it, I told you, I said, this isn't the dump. This is their forensic extractions from the dump. We need the full forensic extraction. You got it. How long did it take me to find exculpatory evidence,
it
communications
was
of,
within an hour of you
yeah,
getting the dump, but it was a case where the state was very adamant that there was nothing on the phone and that I wasn't entitled to the phone. And you said it. A lot of attorneys might have accepted that. We did a motion to compel the phone, which was, I would say, pretty adversarial in the arguments. And and the court agreed with me that I was entitled to the whole phone, and we ordered it was on a Monday. I think you picked it up on Tuesday. You said it's not the phone. I went back on Wednesday. You went back and picked it up. And I think on Thursday, was it like Thursday within getting the phone with 1 hour, you found the text messages where the young lady said, I think I made a mistake.
Yeah. And she was actually talking with her friend, and she had communications with her friend at the time, right around when the sex act was going on, and right after she's talking with her friend. That friend was never even interviewed. They never even talked to that friend. So there were gaping holes, and why, I don't know. I'm not here to question why, but our consult and our investigative work provided you with the information you needed to make a good decision to convince the prosecutor's office to immediately drop the charges. And I think that's pretty much what finally happened, right?
They actually dismissed the charges within
Yeah.
24 hours of you providing me with the document. I don't even think you did a whole phone search at that
Yes.
point,
Didn't have to.
and sent it over. And that child who had no prior contact with the criminal justice system and was, a high school freshman. I mean, he was detained for a little bit of time. It was, those are the cases where, when people say, how do you do what I do? I'm like, that's how I do what I do, because without you stepping in, because as much as I can look at the evidence and I can argue the law to get the evidence, um, phone dumps are hard. There's like looking at the data on the phone. It's not, just so everyone understands, it's not picking up a phone and just looking through the messages. I mean, it's computer gibberish to me.
A lot of it is you have to learn how to search. You have to know what you're looking for, and we're fairly good at that. And if we didn't know, I might have taken that first product that was provided to us, accepted it as the full dump, and not had anything. But I knew right away that it wasn't, because we do this, and glad we had clients who could support that work, because look what happened. Another
Excellent.
case that you and I had, very important. And you were always telling me, I believe my client. It had to do with a shooting, and whether he was there and whether his car was used. And I know you kept telling me, Bill, I really believe this guy. I believe he
I
wasn't.
I
You
said,
did.
I know his car was used. I
Yes,
believe. I
he wasn't there.
know he was not there. And what's
Yeah,
funny is, I know you think that I believe my clients probably more often than I
you
should.
do.
I
You
know.
do.
But I said, this is why. I explained to you, and I was like, he wasn't there. So go on, tell it. He was in custody for 18 months. So
Yeah. So besides looking at all the information, it seemed like they definitely had information to arrest the car. I mean, you can arrest that car, but the situation, and there was like two shooters, and there was nothing tying him in. And I was absolutely very surprised that he was in custody for that long.
not
And you
only
were.
that, do you remember the victim of the shooting who described the two males
Yeah,
gave us a certification that
yeah.
said, you
I know
spoke
him, and
to
it
that.
wasn't him.
You
Yeah,
spoke to that victim,
I
and
did.
he said, I went to high school with the defendant. I
And it
know
wasn't.
him, and it wasn't him, and he
I know.
still had to stay in custody.
And that still
Yeah.
wasn't enough. So then what I wanted and what you provided, that's the thing. You providing me with what I'm asking for isn't always easy. What you did, you got it. And again, it has to do with the cell phone. And what did I find? I found evidence when I believe it was the phone dump, not the phone itself. It was in the phone dump itself, right? In the phone dump, that number one, I conclusively, this isn't the important part too, put that phone in his hands at the time of the shooting by all the communications with different parties, that was him on that phone, because I can position a phone. Let's say we can say, hey, that phone wasn't there, but that phone could have been left home and somebody else had it.
Mhm.
He clearly had that phone. So that was a big piece, putting that phone conclusively in his hand. I found his communications with people. I talked to those people, interviewed those people. Yes, it was him I was talking to. That, I mean, we're talking within minutes either side of the shooting. It was there. And then the big thing was in his film. I think we've all done it. You ever take your cell phone and you're getting it out of your pocket or off your holster and you accidentally take a photo. And what's that photo look like? A big swipey nothing, right? So I found that photo. I don't know if it was in deleted photos or if it was just in the roll. I found a swipey photo that happened, I'm guessing like 7 minutes before the shooting, something like
Right.
that.
And the shooting occurred 20 minutes away. That was
Yeah,
the
yes,
other.
yeah. So that was the point. It was so, okay, what is this swipey photo? It was definitely taken. It was conclusive that it was taken then. And I did investigation, end up looking, it looks like a thermostat. Maybe it's a railing, but it's all smeared. And I went over and found out where'd your client say he was? He said he was home at his mother's house. Guess where the picture was? His mother's house. It was the couch and the thermostat on the wall, though it was swiped, so it was long, and the banister and the railing. I took pictures of
And
that.
there was a pillow. That was the other
Pillow.
thing. There was a
Yeah, so
distinct
really weird.
pillow.
Yeah, it was a weird color or something pillow. Again, everything was swipey. You couldn't ID that photo just by looking at it and know what it was. But once I went, took all the photos, I was very happy. When I got there and I saw this guy, that phone was in his hands and he wasn't there, and he said he wasn't. I gave you all that information, and what was the result of all that?
Well, he was charged with attempted murder. So they dismissed the attempted murder charge, but sometimes the state needs a little something. So he pled to an obstruction of justice, fourth degree offense. And he'd been in custody for 18 months. And this was a case that was during COVID. I asked for that phone. I didn't get that phone for about 15 months, 16 months. We didn't have the phone long. They wouldn't give me the phone. And then the case, and sometimes part of it was that he wasn't indicted, and they're like, we don't have to give it to you till he's indicted, which is accurate to their obligations. But I started just demanding the case go on the trial list. And that's really when I got all the evidence. And, you know, right, it was scheduled for trial. And that's when they made him the offer. And he was willing to accept it so he could get out of custody. And there's a big difference between a first degree or an attempted murder charge and a fourth degree obstruction. So, um, yeah.
Another case with you comes to mind is, and it's not as heinous as that, like a murder charge, but it was a death by auto case, prospectively, as an individual hit and killed someone and left the scene. But my investigative support for you, besides the consultation review and everything, you call me up, we immediately go out and look for video. What do we find that the police didn't find? Though they went to the house, they determined that it was not relevant. Why, I
We
don't know.
found video of
We
the
found the video
accident.
of the actual accident in the middle of the night, in the darkness of a night. A poor woman, her dog got loose from her. This is like midnight, I think it was. It was very late, right around midnight. Her dog got loose from her, ran across the road. When she goes across the road, there's a gentleman walking, like staggering down the road. It looked to me, my belief is she startled by him. He was in the dark, right where her dog was. She picked up her dog, turned to go back home, and here came your client, and he hit her in the darkness of night. Okay, he did stop, but then he eventually left the scene, believing that it wasn't a person that he hit. When you look at everything, there was no proof or reason to believe fully that he did know that it was a person. It happened instantly. It was in the dark. I even found that video helped me see that there was a bus behind him and a bus in front of him, the
Hmm.
headlights. So, you're driving at night and you have headlights coming at you. That can blind you from a darkly dressed person coming into the road quickly. We got the bus video. You could see what happened and what didn't. His claim to you was, I don't drink. I didn't drink anything. We found out where he had dinner. We got the records of their dinner. There was no alcohol. I think there was a Sprite and an iced tea. I
Mhm.
had found another vehicle. It was a bus who was driving behind him, showing him driving perfectly straight down that road, not speeding, driving in normal speed. Then the final thing was we took that video. We were able to determine the speed of his car at the time when he was going down the road. It was a 45, I believe, or a 40. And he was doing like, if it was a 45, he was doing like 47, or 40, it was a 42. We were able to calculate that. We gave all that information to you. You gave all that information to the court and the prosecutor's office, and they come out with a good, I believe, a non-custodial resolution, correct?
It was a non-custodial resolution. Those cases are usually, sometimes they're offered of prison time. And I think the fact that we were able to show there was no alcohol involved, that was a huge, and that um, it was an unfortunate accident. It was an unfortunate sort of set of situation that occurred. Um, I think that the woman was startled. She did trip, and there were things that you were able to see on the video. But yeah, those are the hardest type of cases, the leaving the scenes and the vehicular homicides. You
Very
know,
difficult. Yeah. Yeah. But I think the resolution was right. I think, it was tragic. And I try to put myself in that position. In the middle of the night, a bus is coming the other way. This woman is basically hustling across the street to get away from this guy when she picked up her dog. And you could see she stumbled right before she was hit. So, all you got to do is that millisecond was he looking at the radio? Did he, people talk, they look at their passenger, whatever, a
right?
millisecond of time. It was reasonable to me that he didn't see. And I was glad we were able to find that evidence to help you do your job well.
Yeah, and he was so grateful because he took the position, and I believe him. He didn't think he hit somebody because he stopped, he looked, and it is late at night. And I think people are uncomfortable, like pulling over late at night to see. I mean, he thought he had a deer. It was in a wooded area. It wasn't an unreasonable belief that he hit a deer or an animal. Um, yeah, those are the cases I go home and say to my kids, what happens if you hit something? What do you do when you're driving? You know, and,
Yeah.
have to reinforce to them, you have to stop no matter what, you have to look.
Yeah.
So,
Go to the nearest police station if you have to, whatever that is. Go somewhere public if you're afraid to stop there. And hey, something happened back there. But
right.
we've had a good resolution with a lot of cases. We're talking dismissals, dropping charges, dismissals of indictment involving firearms and firearms issues. And I'm
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not talking about criminals running down the street shooting people, different or possessory crimes and maybe some shooting. And Carl is very good. He's very knowledgeable with firearms. And we've had cases where people are charged with it, but when you look at the evidence, you look at the ballistic evidence, like the police are charging that this person had a 45 caliber and did this, but when you look at the evidence and the things that Carl knows about those guns, that slug that they acquired did not come from that gun. They couldn't have come from that gun because it wasn't the right size and weight, and it was
Hmm.
actually too much. So it never could have fit. It couldn't. He can talk about that and the caliber class and the weight and the grains, and he knows all that. In many cases, we have put them together, done the investigation, done the interviews, and submitted all that evidence to to the attorney, to the prosecutor's office, and getting charges dismissed because it's not right. It's the wrong. It doesn't fit. We
Hmm.
had one with charges where the one police department gave errant information to another who did a search warrant, and they were charging someone with a shooting, and the information was related to someone else. And it was they were saying the person had access and got this gun. The person wasn't even there. They didn't have access. It was a different person. There was a miscommunication, and just those charges were dropped.
Those are the
So
hardest when it's like the
yeah,
wrong person or a simple mistake. And,
yeah,
unfortunately that happens, but it is, I can't tell you how many times I have to explain to the client, because clients, and I'm not kidding when I say this, when I have clients that say, I'm not guilty of this. This isn't me. This isn't, and I have to say, I understand, but you're charged. And now my job is to have to look at all the evidence and figure out a way. And not that I have to prove my client's innocence, but sometimes I have to figure out where the mistake is that puts my client in the position of being charged, is the best way to explain it, you know? But that's hard to do sometimes.
It is. And if the prosecutor's office, because of their time constraints and they're overworked in too many cases, if they're just relying upon that police report, it's our job to provide you with that information in a compelling, factual, very understandable way, and then you're to pass that on. And that's where our report, we believe, and we hear it all the time. We know prosecutors, we know people, and they know our report means something. Have been called by prosecutors' offices pains in the ass. Oh, geez, here's Bill and Carl again. But it's we seek facts, we document them properly, and we provide them. I mean, we don't just work on civil, well, I mean, criminal. We do a lot of civil work. We do a lot of employee work. We do work for international corporations. We do one contract we have doing all the employee work for a company has divisions as a consumer service kind of thing all over the United States and Canada. We do all their work. Um, we had a case where, and this is the advocacy part. So we also provide, you don't do a lot of advocacy, I don't think, like representing the plaintiff or the victim, but sometimes you do. How about
I do represent the victim. I mean, we had a
several? Yeah,
huge case where if it wasn't for the work, I'm going to say you did. I kind of directed it. I was like the maestro of it. That
which one was that? The one down south with the car, or
the
which one?
car is what I was thinking.
Yes.
Where that's a
Yeah.
great case, but I was gonna back on something that you said, and I can't remember. So we can go on to the victim advocacy. So I do victim advocacy on
Yeah.
cases, and I had a case where I had a client and his girlfriend that were sort of attacked in a road rage incident, and I think the individual was only charged with like a careless driving ticket,
Yes.
and
That's
my
the one we're
client,
talking about, right?
oh yes, and my client and his mom were not having it because the driver of the vehicle cut the car off that my client was in and that his girlfriend was driving, stopped the car and literally tried to pull my client, drag him out of the car, and he was a juvenile. And when they tried to talk to the police, it was they were not effective, and they weren't effective because the kid was so angry, just cursing at the police. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, not
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah.
Not helpful. But then you stepped in, so it went from the man having just a traffic ticket to base. Your investigation was amazing. What you found? Tell us
Yeah, we
what
have
you found.
video of him chasing them down the street, video of him cutting them off at different locations. This was cutting them off, jumping out of his truck, physically ripping
Police
the door
didn't
open.
have any of that. The police didn't
All
have any of that.
No, they had none of it. They had none of it because they were charging with a. They didn't even charge him with a careless driving ticket. They made the female driver write the careless driving ticket. The police didn't charge him with anything, nothing. They didn't charge him at all because they believed him. He said, "No, I didn't rip him out. No, no, I didn't chase him." But he ended up having a third degree felony conviction over it, over the
Right.
work that we provide. And I didn't mean to say you don't do advocacy work. It's just from my perspective, most of what you do is defense. You do obviously do advocacy, and we help you out with
Right.
those things.
How did you find the videos though? How, like, that's a really good case of like they called me, the mom and the son called me. They were really upset about, what he went through. And I called you and we talked about it. And there was the police at the time had no videos. They did talk to the man and he said, no, I didn't do any of that. Right. And the young lady had to write the ticket and that was it. And so, how did you, I mean, you found the whole incident from,
Pretty
you know,
much. Yeah,
how,
just go to the scene. As you know, video is so perishable. And everybody goes, oh, how long are videos held? Videos could be a couple days, they could be a week, it could be 2 weeks. People with a concept of that it's held for months. That's not true. Like even at the casinos, a lot of it is gone. If they don't lock it in because they had an incident, a lot of that's gone. They don't want to hold that stuff forever. They're going to have requests coming in all day long. So yeah, just a scene examination, immediate response. You asked us, immediate response. Talk to the people. Looked around, found recordings at a bank and at a Verizon, and then I have to get subpoenas from you to get them, and that's a battle, and then reviewing them. And what do we do for you? What service we provide is we take the video, we do frame by frame analysis. I gave you slowed versions of what happened and frame by frame pictures, and I mean it's compelling. You can't deny the video didn't lie. So
Right.
that's what we
And
do. We
when the
do.
prosecutor at the municipal court saw what we presented, and then he said, and then you delivered everything to the county prosecutor's office. I mean, when they saw it, and I remember there was a discussion of like, the work that really wasn't done. And it unfortunately, my young client, who was an angry young man at the time,
Profane
I,
young man. Profane.
I think he learned though a lesson about like, you know, people want to help you when you're like in a situation that it shows that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Be nice.
it goes back to kindness. People want to help you when they see that you need help and you're being kind and you're being sincere. When you're cursing at everyone, you
Yeah.
know, and attacking everyone verbally, then
It's
they're
not help.
like,
You know what it goes back to? What did I say in the beginning? You want to convince people that it's in their interest or, in the overall interests of the world and society to talk to you. You're not going to convince them by that. But another case real quick I'm thinking of, we had a murder case. It was out in Camden. And then basically the primary evidence was a witness who said they saw everything. And we were reviewing the case and Carl and I talking about it. We're looking at all the stuff and something just didn't make sense. So Carl ends up in this witness, hey, I came out of, XYZ beauty salon. And then I heard the ruckus and I looked and I see these guys arguing. They're pushing and the one guy shoots the other one and this is what he was wearing. This is what happened. And he ran. And we're looking at stuff and it just doesn't look right. Carl goes, unless that person had Superman X-ray vision, they couldn't even see at all. They're not even close, not even leaning. There's no way that a person, and she was totally 100% certain. I stepped out of XYZ beauty salon. I'm right outside the front door. The stuff's around the block through granite buildings. I mean, you
mm-hmm,
can see it. And so those charges were dismissed because the witness couldn't have seen it. And that's the thing with questioning. One thing Carl and I have learned in the state police, and we bring it to our services here too, is layers of questioning. You know, what we would do in shootings there and police shooting investigations, which we did a ton of, is okay, what did you see? This is what I saw. Okay, where were you when you saw it? Who were you with? How did you get there? Why were you there? These layers. If someone's going to lie to you, they're going to be ready for your first question. They may be ready for the second. They're not ready for the rest of them. And so that's why our interviewing skills are paramount to all we do for you, all we do for, whether it's advocacy or defense, civil, criminal. It's important.
I have to say sometimes when we do case reviews or you do initial meetings with my clients after the case reviews and you're like, this is what I think really happened.
Yeah, good, bad, indifferent. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes, but a lot of times when you say it and then you continue the questioning and the information, you'll say this, the client couldn't really explain this, or, the witness couldn't explain this. And then in the end, you're right a lot. You're good. You're
You can
right.
Yeah, you can think that, but as a police officer and as a defense support, don't let that guide your investigation, though. You always can have your perception on what it may be, what the cases may be, but I can't even tell you how many times I've been surprised. Especially being a police officer, you think someone's lying, you think this happened, and then you follow the facts. Don't let the facts govern your case. I got to say, we're involved in in one case right now. It really is upsetting to us that there's a and it's current and it's active, and we're working very hard on this right now. But an older gentleman is being charged with a heinous uh, crime against a juvenile that he didn't know in a public place, being charged with something, and the police believe that they had probable cause to do it, and we looked at it, and on 0 to 100%, it's 100% absolutely didn't happen. I don't even believe the account at all, and I would definitely, if it did happen, it's not this guy. There wasn't even time or
Hmm.
opportunity for him to do it. We're talking a frame of a minute in a public area with cameras everywhere, except for that one little place. But this gentleman, poor gentleman, has been charged with a horrific offense. And luckily, he has the funds, and he is a great attorney, and he has us working. And it's one of those cases where we're like, why are they not looking at this? And what happened? It has to do with when we look at the interview of the child. He didn't know anything what he looked like, but as you progress through, somehow it transformed to it's this guy. It wasn't from him at all. He was the witness. It wasn't from him at all. And information was misrelayed. Information was attributed to his statement and what he told his mom. It wasn't true because we have the recordings, we have the body cam, we have that. It's not true. And this man is charged, and we're working as diligently as we can for another
Right.
great attorney to get these things dismissed. But this poor man is
Yeah.
having to pay a lot
A
of money
lot of money. And
for us
here's
and the
the
attorney.
other, that's the false narrative issue that I see a lot of recently, or maybe it's what because I'm so in it, is that instead of, and I've had this conversation, Mike Fedorko was on my podcast, and we talked about this idea of like the objective following the facts versus, right, following the fact versus creating or believing what happened and then only relying on facts that support what that belief is.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And that's what happened on the case where my client, where I said to you, my client, I really know he's not guilty. I know it's his car, but it's not him. Right. And in the interview, any statements my client was making uh, that did not follow the officer's narrative, they interrupted him, and then they said what they thought happened. Like they said, uh, so you're the only one with your car keys. And my client said, they said, so who has your car keys? And he says, I have my car keys. And, and he starts to say, my sister has the car keys. And
That's all.
before he gets, you can hear it on the interview, but in the report, it didn't say that. It says, um, defendant admitted he's the only one who has the car keys. And then when you listen to the statement, it was, I have the car keys, and the officer said, and so you're the only one with the car keys. So that is the promoting the narrative that they want. I won't even use the word false. I'll say their narrative instead of letting the facts develop and
It's a
figuring out
lack of
what the
Yeah, it's a lack of listening. They're not just not listening. And I understand it. And again, policing is a hard job, and they're running from one thing to the next, and I got it. But that's our job now, to review that stuff and to help you, help all the law firms that we work for to identify these things, to clarify these things. And I'm glad we were able to find the evidence we did. But imagine if he didn't take that swipey photo. Where would we
right.
be now? Probably forced to make a plea to something. I don't know where else, we would go.
Oh,
But
I was trying that case. That case was going to trial, but and the case I'm sure you're working on now, where it's so clear to you, and unfortunately, it's a case that might go to trial, and it's terrible for it's terrible for the defendant. It's also terrible for that child who maybe something possibly did happen, but it's not the right person. And that's the bigger issue, right? You
yeah,
know?
we just had another one of those last year, the year before, with a gentleman who was charged with a a busy 4th of July type, right around 4th of July in one of the shore towns. And she said she fell over in the wave and a man picked me up. And when he did, he touched my vagina. And that's what he did. And then, okay, so maybe that did happen. Maybe it didn't. The girl was little and she got knocked over. Someone picked her up. Could it have been accidental or not? I don't know. But the whole thing was about the identification. And when you listen to the body cams and you look at it, once they honed in on this guy was the client, he became the guy. Like they didn't listen and go back and listen to the body cams where the mom says, I wouldn't believe she didn't even really know who it was. But ultimately her dad's asking her, mom's asking her, she had, well, it could be him. It could be him turned into him. And they charged him. And ultimately, I did all the work I could. I did all the interviews, did everything we could. And ultimately in that case, I happened to be somewhere in a county prosecutor's office and I voiced, talking about something else and I happened to present, made sure they had my report and voiced my opinion a little bit. And within very short time, the charges were dismissed because they weren't supported by fact. You had to go back and listen to the body cams to know. The girl didn't know who it was at all, but her dad wanted her to pick somebody and she, oh, it's him. And he's there with his son standing up to his knees watching and boogie board in front of the lifeguard stand. I mean, the whole thing didn't make sense. And so that was another rightful result, in our opinion, definitely rightful.
There you go. I mean, it is crazy how many different examples that you can give. Well, I can say honestly that I am happy that you are my investigator, and I guess I can share you. But just as long as I'm still the favorite, that's what's important to me.
Oh yes.
Which you might be able to say that now, since
you want me to say this in the public arena with everybody listening.
No,
to your favorite.
No.
I have lots of favorites, but I'm here talking to you to get me to do this, and you know how I am. I'm kind of not shy, but I'm not a self-promoter so much. But this was difficult for me to do this, but I'm glad we did. We got to talk and.
So much for coming on the Mighty Merp podcast. And if anyone needs Bill Scull investigations, all their contact information is on the Mighty Merp podcast. And if you haven't figured it out yet, they're amazing. And I'm going to continue to just keep saying you're mine. Mm-hmm. And what else should I just say? I use you as an investigator. I feel like it's more than that.
Yeah, it is more than that. Yeah, let's see. You call upon us to assist you in getting information so you can make good decisions, and that's what we do.
You do a great job of it, Bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.